Our next group is a panelist that we'd like you to listen to the story of two women. One is from Southeast Michigan. The other is from Southwest Michigan. One works in an enormous school system. The other works on her blueberry farm. And how these two women met each other, why they do what they do, and how together they are nurturing and feeding thousands of school children every day with nutrient-rich food. Christine Kwan will be their moderator, and she will encourage them to introduce themselves in more detail. Please, however, at this moment, welcome Betti Wiggins and Barbara Norman to the stage.
Good morning, everybody. I love these women. I'm Christine Kwan. I work for the Eastern Market in Detroit. Many of you know Eastern Market, know the work that we do. Some of you do not. The Eastern Market is the oldest public market in the country. And I have the greatest job on the planet. I get to work with these two women, and it is my honor to introduce them. This is Betti Wiggins. She is the executive director for the Detroit Public Schools Office of School Nutrition. And Barbara Norman is a fourth-generation blueberry grower in Covert, Michigan. If anybody knows anything about Covert and farming, Google it. It's an incredible, incredible story. That's just an aside. It's just an aside. So I'm going to lead off the discussion. One thing in my questions that we weren't going to cover, but I think it's a great story. If you could just tell us, how did you guys meet? I don't even think I know that story.
I know.
You go, Barbara.
It started, believe it or not, in San Diego, California. I was at a National School Board and Educators Conference, and I met a board member from Detroit Public School. And walking down the street talking, she kept bragging about their new food systems and that I had to meet her food service director, the executive director, none other than Miss Betti Wiggins. Upon getting back to this part of the state, I met Betti at one of my field days. She came down, and we picked blueberries together and talked, and the love was on.
Well, what made it so interesting to me and to be in Covert, it was very reminiscent of how I grew up. I tell people, most of the times because I'm an African American, I'll tell people I was raised on a farm. And they'll say, what part of the South are you from? I'll say, Southern Michigan. I was raised down in that little corner just south of Ann Arbor, if anybody ever heard of Whitaker and Milan maybe, and though that's the area I came out of. So I was raised on a farm, so I was very interested in seeing what Barbara was doing, and I knew the importance of fresh produce. And I also I have a very soft spot in my heart for farmers because I came out of greenhouse country and out of what you guys call specialty crops, but vegetable farmers, tomatoes, potatoes, corn. So, you know, if you go down that part, you'll know there's some huge greenhouses and huge farms like Ruland's Farm and Dundee Potatoes. And so I knew those people growing up, and I used to watch what would happen at the end of the year when they wouldn't sell all their crop, you know, pigs and cows, and had a good meal because, you know, it would be destroyed. So I was determined that I was going to try to buy as much crops, and then just seeing what happened to African American farmers after, if anybody's aware of the Pigford case where they, you know, they said African American farmers weren't treated fairly, which they weren't, and not given a market. And when I met Barbara, I said, hey, here's the time that, you know, we can put a stake in the ground and see what we can do about getting fresh produce and getting her produce, in particular the produce of the people in Southeast Michigan. I know some of you guys are probably from different parts, but I think Southeast Michigan has the most variety, some of the best food. I was up in Traverse City, and I couldn't help myself. I bought a bushel of Honey Crisp apples on my way back home. So, you know, my dedication was to, number one, recognizing that I think farmers are the most courageous small business people there are. Anybody that depends on the sun. So they personify to me what we try to do in this country. You know, you got to depend upon the weather, the sun, so many other things. You really are dedicated.
It is true. Barbara, tell us about the work that's being done on your farm and the way that you're engaging and connecting with schools in the area and around the state.
Well, with the Good Food Charter, me and a couple of friends, we were in on the beginning and setting the goals for the charter. And number 6 is my main goal, and that is for the state of Michigan, then the nation, and then the world, to engage and incorporate food and agriculture as one in the school systems to all children. And so with that, in Covert, that's my goal. That's what we do in Meeting Betti and doing Detroit Public Schools, not only getting your product, your health, growing good, healthy foods, growing nutritious fruits, vegetables, or produce. You need to educate adults and children. And I say from the birth to the grave. And that's my goal, is making children aware of where their food comes from. Everybody should know their farmer. They should know who grows their food. And everyone has to eat. And if you bring up the child right and start incorporating that in the school, we won't have hunger. We won't have what you all call food deserts. And so that's what I do. And in Covert, we have community gardens. We do what we call a 100-yard dash, whereas we have 100 gardens every year. And each year we try to incorporate more families that was not growing a garden. Our kids plant at the senior building in their little windowsill stuff, and just advocating in the community for a healthy food system and stop the junk foods. You know, I live in a community where the 2 convenience store gas stations, even though I'm in a rural area with no red lights and no railroad tracks, no tall buildings, the 2 stores, and we're very rural. I have 53 acres of land, but the kids can't buy fresh fruits or vegetables in the 2 gas stations, and that's sad, or in the 2 convenience stores. So my goal is to kind of make it all come together in a loving, equitable way where everybody wants to eat healthy.
Betti, tell us about the journey that you've had with Detroit Public Schools, the changes you've made and the things that we've done.
First I have to give kudos to Mike Hamm. I started reading some of his papers, and some of the, you gotta understand, as they say, there's some science, there's some factual empirical stuff that you need to know before you start doing this. And so I finally realized that what I was engaged in was not just good food, but changing the food system. That's the kind of work I'm doing now. And then I recognized that I couldn't do it by myself and how wholly ignorant I was of some things, so I reached out for different partners. Great partner I had was the Eastern Market with Christine Kwan. Fair Food Network and the work that they do. I got involved in Detroit Food Policy Council. I started coming to events such as this, and I just totally embraced the Michigan Good Food Charter. I've been around this country a lot of places, but I have never seen a document such as a Good Food Charter that has specific goals with timelines. Right now, I'm engaged in number 1, and that's because of that dirty, dusty country road and the folk that I knew who raised the crops and the animals. And I'm also engaged in number 5. And because of number 1, I got engaged in something called the Local Food Association, which is centered in Kentucky. But what the Local Food Association is about is to try to bring, for the small growers, bring them into sort of like the Manufacturers Association, where they can have a voice. And then I'm engaged in terms of trying to get my colleagues in the state, school food service directors, all over this country. We're into a $400 billion business, and we can make an impact in our local economy. And a lot of food service folk are just afraid of it because it's change. And everybody keeps focusing on the nutrition standards. The nutrition standards are the nutrition standards are the nutrition standards. But how you implement those standards, that's what they pay us to do. So my journey started becoming educated, reaching out, understanding what was available through the Healthy and Hunger-Free Act of 2010, that needs to be reauthorized. I don't care what politicians or what side wins. We need to be behind that, because that's the first thing, that's the first really stick in the ground for children where we're going to have a standard. We got to change the food system and what we feed children. So I got engaged in that. And then just sitting down and making a commitment. The kids in Detroit Public, and not only do I serve Detroit Public, I serve 35 charter schools, 2 small school districts, and something called the EAA. I just said, in the city of Detroit, since I'm going to be responsible for feeding all these kids, we're going to have healthy food. And so we do educational things with the Eastern Market. I do things with the Detroit Lions of getting kids engaged, as Barbara said. And then we decided to have a school garden program. We have 76 school gardens. We have a 4.5-acre farm that's going to expand to 11 acres next year. We have a greenhouse, you know, and I didn't do all of this by myself. It's a journey of collaboration, and we created something called the Detroit School Garden Collaborative. And anybody can join, and because we have, you know, scale, we help people. We use USDA money, so we don't charge. We help people as long as they're going to pursue the standards, the nutrition standards, and trying to increase local food. Right now, I've been saying 30%, you know, I got to get to 30. Well, I have 22.5% of all my product, my fresh fruits and vegetables, come from Michigan, local. So I kept saying 30. They said, no, Betty, it's only 20. I said, no, it's 30. It should be 30. It should be 30. 20 is not even heavy lifting. So it should be 30. So if I could lobby for that, I'll lobby for that. So that's how my journey started, and that's how it continues to eventually have, in my estimation, when I put out my RFP, because I do 85,000 meals a day. There's only one organization in this state to serve more meals than I do, and that's corrections. That's sad. But, you know, if you look at all the little school districts and everything, if we would just come together and say, and make a commitment to Michigan agriculture, whether you're a self-op or a management company, and farmers, the farmers, you small growers, you're taxpayers, you're on school boards, you got people in the legislature. We should just make this commitment to the Michigan farmer. We could, you know, one of my ideas that I had was that if the state of Michigan would give us 1 cent for every time we serve a reimbursable meal with local food in it, that 1 cent would circulate in the economy. There's 565,000 reimbursable lunches being served. It's not a big impact, but money is money is money. So, you know, like the small apple grower told me the time I bought 300 cases of apples from him that he would not have had, that it would have laid on the ground or he wouldn't have a customer for. He said that allowed him to buy a new cooler. So now he has a way, you know, a better way to manage his harvest. That's what I'm engaged in. Number 5 is going to take care of itself, because we have the Michigan Department of Education. They're going to make sure we do number 5. So, which is the new nutrition standards and making sure food. And so that's, to me, is the one that we as food service directors and institutional buyers, hospitals, nursing homes, daycare centers, should be focusing on, which would improve our economy. So I'm a rooter for the farmers, and I hope that what we're doing is having some meaningful impact.
Barbara, we know that the Good Food Charter puts 6 goals for 2020. One of those is for institutions to buy 20% at that time. What do you think it's going to take to get us there?
This audience. It's going to take each and every one of us to just embrace healthy foods. We're a generation that hasn't given anything back. Every generation before us, whether it was war, whether it was land, whether it was whatever, if you look at the data, we have the less healthiest young people, the less educated young people. We have to step up, work together, and get this right, because everybody has to eat. There's more childhood obesity, there's more childhood diabetics, and we're study buying food. So we have to take the initiative to make sure that what we put in our bodies as an example, and what your children eat or your grandchildren or your neighbors or your senior citizens is good, healthy, fresh food. And this is the state that can lead the nation in it. I was listening to Betty, and we have so much in common because I was in the audience when Mike Ham first came to MSU. I heard his very first speech, and we've kind of talked since then. And also, I was food service director at South Haven High School for years, and when none of this was going on, and I used to get cabbage from a local grower who drove the buses with me, just thinking about it. So now that it's come full circle, and with somebody like Detroit Public Schools leading the way, and we have ag classes on my farm. They come down and they pick berries, and several other schools has joined in since then. Me and other farmers, we go to Detroit and help plant gardens. We bring blueberries, we give blueberry plants, not just growing your produce or your fruit and selling it. That's part of it, yes. But the other part is educating people, giving something back and helping people to understand what a food systems mean, what healthy food means. So.
Betty, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think what I would add too is it is that community engagement part, you know? It is the reality that we're all in this together. I was out at a conference I think it was in Denver, and I was talking about serving asparagus. I buy asparagus from up here. It's a great thing about being from Michigan. When I talk about my work, I can just hold up my hand. I say, I get my peaches from here, I get my blueberries from here, I get my potatoes from down here. I had potatoes from Kalkaska, and I was on my way to Grand Rapids, and we jokingly said, we ought to find that farm. I was on my way to Traverse City, and we said, we ought to find that farm, El Maple Farm up in Kalkaska. And then I got my apples from Clink Orchard in Grand River, and I'm getting to know, in Grand Rapids, so I'm getting to know the farmers' names. I'm getting to their people. So I can tell my kids, you know, the people at El Maple Farm grew our potatoes. You know, we just did that for Food Day. So I think also the farmers need to give back in terms of visiting my kids and saying, yeah, I'm the farmer that raised your potatoes. That's called community engagement. That's how we communicate. That's how we break things down. As I said, I was in Denver, and somebody from the Asparagus Association stood up and said, I really want to thank Detroit Public Schools for buying our asparagus. You know how wonderful that was to hear someone from upstate Michigan talk about thanking Detroit instead of complaining about us? So that, you know, the community engagement, the outreach, I'm really, you know, if there's anything I would like to do is I really would like to see our school food people in the state of Michigan. Because some of you know, you guys got small school districts. It's very hard for me because the supply chain is my problem. I got 131 schools. But in these little local school districts, you get to know the food service director. In some of your schools, you know, 3-4 bushels can help. But when I buy apples, I had to buy, when I bought white baker potatoes from Kalkaska, that was 385 crates. I had to buy apples for something like 300. I buy in half truckloads. I get 80,000 pounds of blueberries from Covert. When I bought my peaches, it was 50,000 that I had. So yeah, I don't buy in the dozens. I buy in the thousands. So when I think about growers out there in Michigan growing that stuff, you got to say, you know, let's go down here and talk to these people in Detroit, and we'll form some sort of a consortium or whatever. I challenge the school food consortiums in Michigan that we got to stop, break down, and talk about how we possibly could have a bid with our local farmers together. I know it may not be possible for the aggregate, and I'm not asking you to suppress or you know, not using your commercial contracts you have, but we're a fixed market. I can tell you how many kids I'm going to buy. You don't have to go out there, you know, like go to farmer's market or something. Well, maybe I'm going to sell 6 bushels, 12 bushels, or whatever. There's a peach brokerage out in Benton Harbor that know they're going to get 50,000 peaches ordered from Detroit Public or those farmers. So the other thing is that's I have to say is supply chain. I have finally found out that my local food hub is my local distributor, who was able to process 40,000 pounds of sweet corn for me, in 2.5 days and had it to my kids' trays, never frozen. You should have saw those kids when we grew that sweet corn, and they never, because they all thought the sweet corn came in kernels. They didn't know it could come on a cob. So those are the kind of things, if I would say, if we're going to change the food system, the farmers are going to have to engage with the customers and the consumers. I'm not the consumer. I got 85 little children out there and their families behind them, and that's the reason I support things like our Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program that's sponsored by the USDA, where I'm allowed to introduce foods, new fruits and vegetables to the kids. So our priority has been local foods. I'm working with an apple house, forgive me, somewhere here in Michigan, where we're putting a Michigan apple on our menu every month. So that, I mean, those are the kind of things, but it was through communication and people reaching out. The apple guy, I can't remember the name of the book, because he actually came down and sat and talked with me and showed me what they could do. I'm trying to get the Asparagus Association to sit down and talk with me, because we'll take seconds. I don't want all those pretty ones with the rubber bands. If I could get the ones, the tips and stems, and we put those in 20-pound, pack them in 20-pound cases, all of a sudden, green beans, I don't have to do. I got a Michigan product on my menu. So it's that kind of stuff. It is communication, and it is an awareness that we can change, we can meet all the goals in the good food chart, particularly one, if we all, work together.
What do you both, maybe Barbara can start, what are the biggest challenges that you face in the work that you're doing now? I mean, there's always challenges on the farm, for sure.
I have to think about that. There are some challenges, but personally, I always see the glass as half full. I never really see it half empty. So with a little prayer, challenges are the things that you really have no control. Maybe the weather, but I work around that. Because I always have produce every year. I don't care what other farmers say, and this might sound funny to some, but I always have good blueberries. So when we change from maybe hand picking to more the machine pick, I was able to make that adjustment. I really don't have a lot of challenges.
That's awesome.
I really don't. So I just can't make up a lot of words. Betti was a blessing to me. I've done other markets. I also did the Healthy Snacks program that USDA sponsored, where children were to get healthy snacks all during today at the schools. And I started right there at Covert Public Schools and put a few in South Haven. And those were where in the hallways, on the desk, or wherever the children went during the day, the government or the nutrition program or the food policy recognized that children should be able to eat an apple, or they won't let us do grapes because kids throw them, but whatever, cherry tomatoes, whatever it is that a kid's taste buds need during the run of the day, they were able to get them, not just in the lunch program. So I did that. And so there's always been something that was so beneficial to making all of this work. And giving stuff to the seniors or at church, just making everybody aware of the difference in something produced somewhere else, frozen and rolled across the nation in a truck, pig green, rolled across the nation in a truck, and maybe a week or two after it's on the shelf, it gets ripe. All of it works together, and that I've always tried to promote that. So to me, like I said, I really don't have a lot of challenges.
What about you, Betti? Where do you think our challenges are in Detroit?
Our challenges in Detroit, I see a lot of changes happen. One of the challenges that I feel like from an institutional perspective is that, or even from a community perspective, sometimes people view Detroit Public Schools as the 800-pound gorilla in the room. And so they stay away, and they don't want to work with us, or they think because, or think because I am very aggressive in what I say, is because I got a whole bunch of regulations behind me. And while some people take this on as an avocation, This is part of my profession, feeding kids healthy, trying to change the food system. So that's the reason it becomes more important to me is I have to go out and get champions for what I do. We did a partnership with Fair Food. I hope Oregon on mine. We did a partnership with Fair Food Network where I need to get to the parents. So we were distributing his information in our cafeteria lines. So the kids got the cards, we put the posters in our schools, and so this wasn't a collaboration that took us 15 years to get together. It took a telephone call. The same thing with Eastern Market, whereas Eastern Market helps me coordinate farmers to get the product out. I work in the community with the Detroit Food Policy Council where we got kids to events. So the challenge is that people have to take you serious. When we look outwardly into the state, and it's just not about Detroit, if we're going to really change the food system, if there's any of my colleagues here who are food service directors, I would say, why can't we in the state of Michigan, with all the products that we have, even with our seasonality, because it doesn't all have to be fresh, have one day where we all serve the same menu with the emphasis of having it be local. It's a whole thing of folks not working in silos. I mean, I'm very serious about what it is people working in silos. I tell people all the time, I don't care how you teach your ABCs. I don't care whether you're charter, Catholic, homeschool, no school, without school, I don't care. A good, nutritious meal is what all our kids deserve. And we can deliver that to our trays. We can even, deliver it to our lunch bags. And the way we deliver it to our lunch bags is the parents have to be informed. That's the reason I was really interested in working with Fair Food Network, because of the double up bucks. Don't think that poverty or good food is not available only in Detroit, but when you get a program like Double Up Bucks, 1 in 6 persons in the state of Michigan are on food stamps. 1 in 6 don't all live in Detroit. So you go to all these areas, when I go camping or I go out visiting friends and stuff, and I go into the middle, I didn't know so much poverty existed in the center of our state. So programs like Double Up Bucks allows people to increase the fresh fruits and vegetables. So those are the challenges we have, is educating, working together, because we got good policies in place. The Michigan Department of Education, they just came out with some smart snack rules. They're real serious about you will serve our kids healthy. I mean, they have rules. I mean, and then they have other things. I just came back from this weekend for the School Nutrition Association meeting in Traverse City. And the things that the Michigan Department of Education's Nutrition Division does in providing us with education and materials, and it's just a wealth of stuff. So the challenge is, I think, stop working in silos, stop thinking that your work is the most important work, and there's no way or no place to collaborate if we're all interested in doing one thing, increasing access of healthy foods and fruits, not only to kids, but to our families. That, if we increase that, then the return to our farmers, the Michigan economy, and the wheel goes around, or that whole song. But that is the outcome that I would like to see, because we're not going to build cars anymore, and manufacturing's not coming back, and I'm tired of exporting congressional districts and PhDs, because that's just about all we're doing right now.
Barbara, we have a little bit time left. I just want to say ask you guys one more thing. What is your vision going forward? What do you see for good food in the state of Michigan going forward? What's your vision?
Okay, part of it, let me say this. Instead of the word challenge, where after I finish talking, it's change. I don't look at it as a challenge. As things change and the rules and regulations get different, or promoting more healthy foods, then we as farmers have to just change. We have to educate ourselves. We have to change the way our grandparents farm. We have to change the way we grow our foods and produce. And so that's my vision, is keeping up with the Good Food Charter, keeping up with the food policies, and doing whatever it is that I can do as one, or whatever I can do to encourage and help and be a resource for other people. My vision is to move with the change, be a game changer. if I can encourage anybody to do anything or help any school system start serving local or healthy or regional foods, then that's what the vision is. Just move with the flow.
What
Thank
about
you.
you, Betty?
My vision is that I would like to see the state of Michigan come up with some sort of reimbursement to school meals if they serve local. For every meal they serve, they give us some sort of a reimbursement for it. 10 cents a meal, 5 cents a meal. I mean, we can do it. So while they're making all these tax cuts and stuff, let some of that dribble down, not just to business people, but to our farmers. You know, to our farmers. If you know, and I think that should be something, because when I go out on the west side of the state and I recognize that some of our legislators are farmers, why aren't you even thinking of your own best interest, you know, of doing that? And I think that's something that we can accomplish in Michigan. I really think we should get together as people like myself. I'll buy the stuff if they give me enough money. And if we buy it in Michigan, it stays in Michigan, and it only helps our industry grow. So that's the one thing I want, that's the thing I think that we could do. The policies are all there. The spirit, you know, the spirit is willing, but the pocketbooks aren't, you know. So those are the kind of things that we need to be working on together with healthcare, and particularly in school meals. That's a reimbursable program. Healthcare, you can do it with affordable. And I just came back from the Michigan Health Endowment Fund, $1.56 billion over a period because of the Affordable Health Care Act. Why aren't you farmers or us getting together and saying, look, we want to do some of this money for a sustainable project around local food, that, you know, use some of this money to do those kind of things. So that's my vision, is to get us together and say, local food costs money, we're willing to do it, but our government has to help us. I'm not saying take care of us, because you're going to work and I'm going to work to earn that money.
Well, thank you guys. You guys have been great. I think everybody here is a little bit more inspired, a little bit more aware of what we're doing in Detroit and what's happening over in Southwest Michigan on the blueberry farm. If you have never been and had a Barbara blueberry, you've got to come out. It is really an honor to work with both of them. And how about a big round of applause for them?